Somebody on the open source was wanting video of an install, and look, you know, I install in phases, and this is phase 1 of the install on this OWK. You basically got a mess of wires here. It looks confusing. It's really not. Let me take some of these wires out of the picture that don't really matter right now. So the first step I'm going to do, this is of course is my battery leads. This is my positive lead from the recharge port, and this red wire in this bundle is my positive lead from my NeoPixel adapter. I'm going to be combining my positive lead from my NeoPixel adapter and the positive lead from the battery wire, and I'm going to join them, solder them together, and then I'm going to join the positive from the recharge port, and I'm actually going to cut this wire and use this wire as a scrap that's going to feed my positive to the Proffie board. So all 4 of these wires are going to be combined into just one pigtail that comes up to feed the Proffie board positive. This white wire is my board negative wire from my recharge port. This black wire is my recharge port negative, and it's going to join with the battery negative so I can charge my battery through the recharge port. These 2 blue wires here are my speaker wires. So you can see it's a lot more simple than it looks here. You know, all these wires can be confusing. Now, the rest of the wires. Green is my main switch wire. Then I have yellow, which is my auxiliary switch wire. And then I have my common switch ground. That's the common ground to both switches. And then my orange wire, which is my NeoPixel data. That's what all these wires are. It's relatively simple. Now they're all way too long right now for this chassis system. But I'm getting ready to consolidate the positives. But before I consolidate the positives, because that's when the install begins, I'm going to do a final test of my buttons. So the 2 buttons on this OWK are here on the jewel, and then this red button here. Now initially I had wired this to be the main button, so it's actually connected to my green switch wire, and this one to my yellow, but the customer actually wants the jewel to be the main activation on the Saber. So I'm actually going to wire the main yellow wire to the main switch. So what I do is I bring in my voltmeter here and I switch her to continuity, and then I'm going to grab my common ground wire and I'm going to clip to my common ground wire, and then I'm going to grab my yellow wire which goes to the jewel bezel, and then I'm going to depress the jewel bezel and we should hear a tone. So we've got tone. Fire. Just kidding. Now I'm going to connect to my green wire, which is my red button switch, and I'm going to depress the red button. So that's my final functionality test there. I've already tested the NeoPixel adapter in there, and I've already shown you all the video on how I did that. So basically, now I'm ready to get all of this crap out of the way so I can consolidate all my positives. So typically what I do is I'll take all these wires that I'm not using and I'll tape them out of the way, and I'll get back to you once I finish that. Okay, so now all we have remaining are our red wires. You know, so I'm simplifying things. Basically, I want to get to a point where I can recharge this battery. So today, while I'm here on a quick lunch break, I'm going to consolidate all these red wires so I can actually want to make that a little bit longer. There's that, and to show you, I use 22 for my feeds. There's a 22 stripper. Bada bing. Now I'm going to twist these positives together. Give them a little dip in the flux. I need anything of flux. Sorry, I had to clean my soldering iron and turn it on. So right now I'm putting a little bit of solder on my iron, and then I'm going to tin this tied pair. They're tinned. Now I'm going to take this pigtail that I cut off, which was my positive NeoPixel feed, so I don't need any more wire. And then I'm going to look here, let's see, how long do I need this to be? And this is going to be tough, so I cut it a little bit longer than you normally need because, you know, it's going to be hard, but I'm going to end up tucking it back down in there. But I need to leave enough to strip, so I'm going to cut it there. And then I'm going to strip this one. So this is, I know it doesn't look like 22 gauge wire, but it is. PTFE wire, I use all mil-spec PTFE on my installs, sans the battery wire that comes on the pre-wired batteries. But all my wire in the Saber is mil-spec PTFE, and the cool thing about mil-spec PTFE, so this is the 24 gauge wire that comes on the custom Saber shop's pre-wired batteries. This is 24 gauge wire. This is 22 gauge wire. Look at the difference in the diameter between the two. This is 22 gauge PTFE. This is 24 gauge normal rubber insulator. So you can see there's quite a bit of difference. The 22 PTFE is about the same size as 28 gauge stranded normal. So I'm going to strip me some off of my pigtail. Now this pigtail, this end is going to the Proffie board once I finish my install. But right now what I'm going to do, and you guys might see my favorite tool come in here because now you're getting ready to see why it's my favorite tool, which is forceps or hemostats, depends on, you know, who you are. I like putting hemostats on these small wires when I'm in tight spaces so I can twist them. Now I can twist the wires together. And that didn't work. I accidentally deleted the clip, but just imagine the positive wires being consolidated with a pigtail. Then I joined the negative from the recharge port to the negative on the battery, and then I put the Saber battery on the charger through my recharge port so that once I got a chance to install the Saber, the battery was fully charged. That's what you should do. So imagine all that happened and you didn't miss it. I'm sorry. I messed up. Anyway, here's the rest of the install. Here, got a brand new Proffie board, cleaning my contacts with isopropyl alcohol so it makes them easier to solder onto. I'm trying to keep all this on the screen here for you. So I'm cleaning all my contacts. Now I'm going to go with the dry end of the Q-tip, even though the ethanol will evaporate. And I'm going to wipe all that off. I'm sorry, the isopropyl, not ethanol. Now I'm going to switch to the other side. Now, this is the side that I'll be applying solder to, most likely. So I want y'all to see what's going on here. This is definitely the side I'm going to be applying solder to. And I'm cleaning all the contacts that I plan on using. Alright, now the dry end, dab any off and it can evaporate in the meantime. So there we go, bada bing, bada boom. So we are definitely in business here. That's cleaning the contacts. So now that my Proffie is clean on the underside, I'm going to go ahead and solder my ground wire from this ground tab here where my pointer is down to this ground mark here. So I'm going to run this wire right along here It's going to cross over, and then it's going to go to our ground tab here. So since I'm soldering this on the underside of the board, and right now I'm going to clean my soldering iron. Solid there. Oops. Clean my soldering iron. I'm also going to take a little bit of flux paste, just a dab. You put a little bit of flux paste, there's a hair in it. A little bit of flux paste there on that, and a little bit of flux paste down here where the wire, ground wire is going to go, which will help us get solder to it here. Now, I'm going to tin the pad. I want to make sure that it's in the screen here. It's crazy. Trying to keep this in screen and steady and in focus. So now I'm going in and heating my pad. And that pad is tinned. And now I'm going to tin this pad. Where my wire is going to go. Bada bing, just like that. So now both of my ground tabs are pinned, and I'm not going to use the flux yet. So right now what I'm going to do off camera is I'm going to strip a piece of my wire that's going from battery negative to ground, and I'm using 30 gauge MTFBWY stranded wire. This is just making sure that my ground gets negative return because there is no trace on the board for this, and I'm going to pre-tin my wire off camera here so you're not going to see that, but hopefully you will see it when I bring it in to tack it. So there's my wire that I'm getting ready to tack. Bam! Boom, we're on. So there's my ground wire tacked onto the ground stub, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to run this wire right along my SD card, and it still leaves my data ports open so I can bring the wires up from the bottom, and then I'm going to bring the wire across here and onto there where I've already tinned that ground pad. So now what I'm going to do, because that's the length of my wire, I'm going to cut it, and now I'm going to strip the end of that wire just a little bit, just enough to go on the pad. A little bit of flux to help us along the way, and I'm going to tin that wire. Okay, now that wire's tinned. Now I have to make sure we're in frame here, because I'm going to be bringing this wire down onto our pad there. And normally, you know, I'm not doing this under the scope, but there is our wire that's tinned on our pad that's tinned for ground. Clean my tip, and we go for the kill. Bam! So there I have my ground wire run. Now this is the ground wire that has to be put on unless you're running. I try to minimize the amount of wires, so I try to do all this stuff beforehand. But boom, there's my ground wire. Now I'm going to take out my handy dandy voltmeter, and we're going to test for continuity here. You're not going to see this, but you should hear tone once I know I have continuity on that wire. And I'm going to flip my board over, and I know I'm putting one of my pins in the ground and the other one into my negative, battery negative, and you should hear a tone. We've got tone. So, bada bang. That is successful. Alright, so I know that there's going to be some people that don't like what I do here, but this is what I do. I only like running one wire off my NeoPixel adapter, and I use 22 gauge single strand wire as my negative wire. So here on the MOSFETs, you know, you can either run one wire off here, one wire off here, and one wire off here to your NeoPixel adapter. But what I prefer to do is go ahead and bridge this one, and this one, and I'm using resistor tail. So there you see a resistor tail coming up through the hole of this first MOSFET, and I'm getting ready to solder away. So here we go on this first MOSFET. And I tin my iron here a little bit. We're going to come in here and make contact. And we're going to go in for the kill. Solder's going into the hole. Now we've got some solder on the hole. So we're golden there. And then I'm going to trim that. I will come back and reflow that to make sure we're solid here in a second. After I do that one, then what I do is I basically bend that around so it's covering, it's going over the insulation on the wire, and then I'm going to cut my resistor tail. And then I'm going to put my resistor tail into the hole and fold it back down on itself like this. So this is the ground wire that you saw me previously install. So this will be the bottom side of my board that you don't see. This is my ground wire connection. This is my resistor tail, which goes over the wire insulator. I keep it away from this negative, and it goes over the negative wire and then over here into this hole of this FET. Alright, I kind of screwed up and deleted the video that I made to show how all this worked out. So this is an old Proffie board that actually a customer fried, but I just wanted to kind of show you the bridges, completed bridges on the FETs on the back side of my board. Okay, now we've done all our bridges on the board and done our ground connection. I'm going to go ahead and program the board. So I'm opening Lightsaber Eno, and once it's open, I'll connect my Proffie. So, you know, if you guys haven't seen my programming, basic programming for Teensy Saber or programming your Proffie, you should watch those videos, but that's what I'm getting ready to do. I'm not going to show you how to do this. I do this before I install my boards completely, so that if there's a problem on my boards, I will know about it via the serial monitor. So I'm just going to program this board with a config file that I already know works, sing KRS. Now I'm going to go ahead and plug, oops, let's see what else. Yep, I want to go ahead and plug in my SD card because it's already programmed with the fonts that I need for this, so I'll know if it's okay. So, bingo! So now my Proffie's plugged in. I'm going to Tools. I don't want to do serial and mass storage on this right now because just whatever. Port is going to be COM3 Proffie board. Tools, blah, 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 blah. Fastest. Everything's good there. So now we're ready to upload, so I'm going to go hit upload. And off we go. We're off to the races on uploading to our Proffie. And soon we're going to find out if our Proffie has any errors. You know, I ordered 20 Proffies on the TRA run, and, you know, I had one board that had a timeout on the motion chip which I still have to take pictures of that board and send it back into Frederick for replacement. But there was some kind of a motion chip timeout issue. So out of the 20 boards I ordered on the TRA run, that's the only board that I've had that had any issues. So it's getting ready to reboot the board, shut it down. Boom, here it goes. Now we're programming, we're in business. I'm actively scrolling. As you can see, it's programming. We're in business, we're getting there, quarter of the way home. Now, I do not have this board connected to a battery. Of course, the way I'm capturing this video now, you can't see what I'm doing with the board, but I've just plugged in the micro USB into the Proffie, and I'm just uploading a basic generic program that I know that works. And the reason that I'm doing this is so I can open the serial monitor and make sure everything's working. In the serial monitor, boom, the board is programmed. So now I'm going to Tools, go to serial monitor, and bam. Let's see, motion disabled, blah blah blah, sharpness. Let's read all the messages on boot up. The SD card was found. Blah blah blah. Everything's looking good there. Let's go BATT. Voltage is 0.22 because it's not on. There, it's on. Let's do a couple clashes on it by tapping the board. Let's go to lockup. LOCK, 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 BLAST, 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 and then let's swing it around a little bit, and you should see, swing highs and swing lows are playing. So now let's go to off, retraction. So let's go next, preset, bam, next preset, bam. So we're golden there. So the board is programmed. Now we are ready to begin our install. So for those of you that have been watching the video, I just programmed my Proffie. Here it is. I'm going to unplug it. You heard it disconnect from my computer. This board is ready to be installed. Now, before I install it, I'm going to remove the micro SD card because I don't want it in there when I go to install the Saber. And 4 hours ago I plugged this Saber in so it would charge, and now I got a green light on my charger. So the cool thing is, before I begin this install, is that my battery is fully charged on this Saber that I'm getting ready to install. And now I'm looking for a kill key, if I can find one. Aha! Kill key. And I'm going to put the kill key in because I don't like working on an active battery. And let me test and make sure my kill key worked. So I'm going to strip this negative wire, 22 gauge, bada bam, and I'm going to strip this red wire, which is also 22 gauge, and I'm going to put the voltmeter on there, and I should be reading 0 volts just to make sure I got no voltage flowing before all this is going on. Let's switch my voltmeter. I'm going to bring in my voltmeter in the picture, so I'm going to move the Proffie over, and I'm going to turn my voltmeter on. I think the screen is that way for you guys, so you guys can see my voltmeter. And I'm going to attach my positive lead to the positive and my negative lead to my negative wire here, and we should be getting 0 volts. And we are getting 0 volts. If I pull the kill key, oops, 4.07 volts. I added on the wrong voltage selection. So there you see I got 4.06 volts in this battery. I'm going to put in the kill key. Bam! 0 volts. So number one, I know the recharge port is wired correctly. I know I've got my kill key in. I've got no volts going to my wires while I'm working on the Saber. I've got my micro SD card removed from my programmed Proffie board, and I'm ready to begin the install. So, if you look at my wires here, basically how I'm going to put this Proffie on is I'm going to be wiring it like this, and you know, I bring my wires up from underneath, and I am going to be building it up over here, and I'm probably going to, you know, whittle these down. I probably should have done that before I began the install, because I'm going to put a bit of insulation in this chassis, some rubber insulation, because the speaker's right here in the chassis, and the speaker usually the chassis translates vibration of the speaker to the board, and I don't want that. So I'm going to be putting some 3M tape here underneath the board to insulate the board from the chassis and hopefully reduce false clashes. So that's what's getting ready to happen now. So we're ready to begin the install. We're ready to begin. So how I wire these is I try to work from the back to the front. So the first wire I'm going to connect is our data line, and our data line is going to go here. And since I'm working on this side, the next wire I have, the wire on this side, is going to be my auxiliary switch wire, which my auxiliary switch wire is going to be 1, 2, 3, this port right here. So that's going to be my green wire, is going to come up through there, and then my 2 speaker wires attach here. And then I'll start working on the other side from the back to the front. I'm going to have my ground for my switches. The white wire for my switches will attach here, and then my primary switch here, my main positive here, negative and negative here, and then negative neopixels on one of my bridge connections. Alright, so I said the first wire I'm going to attach is my neopixel data, which is this orange wire, which of course, you know, I don't need that much. So what I'm going to do is get it about the length I need it, which is going to be about, I would say it's going to be safe about right there. And then I'm going to, I use 26 gauge for my neopixel data. I have used 30, it really doesn't matter. Neopixel data is not carrying a ton of amps, but I'm going to go ahead and strip that wire about yay long. I'm going to zap it in some of the gooey goodness of that, and then I'm going to butter up my soldering iron a little bit, and bam! Bam! Oops! Got a little bit of wire that popped out on me there, which we don't want that. So let's try to smooth that down a little bit. You want this to be skinny because I'm actually, how I do these is I come up through the hole. So this is my neopixel data, and I know it needs to come up through this hole. I feel like Aaron from A&W Saver Services. I can't find the hole. That's what she said. Oh, there we go. Alright, so now I am going to cramp quarters with this camera here. It's not how I would normally do things. Alright, so now I got my data line in there, and let's clean that soldering iron tip. And I'm going to come in here on my data line, and we're going to, bam, solder her to it. And there, we're good to go. And I might need to reflow that. So let's reflow that and make sure we got good contact with the pad, and clean off my soldering iron here, come back in here, and we'll reflow that and make sure we got, you don't want to expose it to a lot of heat, but there you go. So that's reflowed, we're good there, and I probably won't have to use those helping hands again. So my next wire that I need to hook up is going to be my auxiliary switch wire, which is green. So now I'm going to bring out my green wire out. out of my tape because he wants the jewel to be our main, or I'm sorry, our main activation switch. So this green wire actually goes to the red button, and it's going to be the 1/2/3 wire back. So let's get a rough measurement on that wire. 1, 2, 3. But in case he changes his mind, let's make sure I have enough left to get to the main switch, which I will, because that one's further back. So 1, 2, 3 back from the speaker is our auxiliary switch wire. So I'm going to leave it a little long. Bada bing. And I use 30 for my switch wire, so I'm going to come in here and strip that. Just a hair of it. Bam! And this is our auxiliary switch wire. And then next will be our speaker wires. I don't need that much flux on there. Just a little bit of love with some flux. And then I'm going to come in here and I'm going to pre-tin that wire. Bada bing. 1, 2, 3 back from the speakers. So 1, 2, 3 back from the speakers. Right there is where she goes. So I want to get my green wire up in there, and it's in there pretty good. I got insulation all the way to the board. You know, normally I would be doing this in reverse, but it's about impossible with the camera right where I need to be working at. One, two, 1, 2, 3. One, two, 3. That looks pretty solid. Now, my speakers. These are my speaker wires coming out, and they need to go to these two pads. So I'm going to look at how long they need to be. They need to be about that long. So I'm going to cut these two about right there. These aren't my speaker wires. This is a cheaper MTFBWY that I don't really like a lot, but I didn't rewire the speaker because remember this was a previously installed lightsaber and I am just basically adding the Proffie to it. I did not rewire the speaker, but I did rewire the recharge port because in my opinion you know, there weren't thick enough gauge wires used on the recharge port or on the NeoPixel adapter, so I have rewired both of those. So now I've got these speaker wires stripped. I'm going to dip them in buttery love. Grip, dip, whatever, I don't remember what the hell she means that, right? Grip, dip, and stick. Whatever he said. So now I'm going to tin those wires to get them ready to pass up through my speaker wire holes. And then I'm going to whip out my favorite tool. Oh, come on now. Lock on now. There we go. And my first speaker wire. And look, these are going to be sticking up through there a lot longer than they should be. Oops. Don't do that. There we go. I don't want to do that. Let's try to hit that pad. Normally I would be soldering from the opposite side, but the stupid camera is right where I need to be. Because I don't like coming in on those pads like that. Let's... Bam. There we go. I like that. Oh, man. Cramped quarters. Cramped quarters there. Bada bing. And then we're going to bring our other speaker wire up in the hole right next to that one. And then I'm going to stop the video and start another clip. Because when I do long clips, I've been getting a lot of video errors. Alright, so there we go there. I've got the wire up through, the speaker wire up through there. Now I'm going to solder that wire on. Bam. Isn't that cool? Looks pretty good. Now I'm going to trim that and trim that. So there's our speaker wires. Technically now if I, well, no, it's not going to work because I don't have the battery negative wire hooked on yet. So my battery negative wire I'm going to bring to this clear. You know, I put my negative to ground on this negative, but now I'm going to put my battery negative up through this one. So that's my next wire on this side. So I'm going to release my hemostats, and the speakers are hooked up. And then I'm going to get an approximate length on that one, on that white wire, which is going to be probably about right there. And then I'm going to strip a little bit of that one, which that one's 22 gauge. Bam! Muy excelente. I meant to start a new clip here. I'll tin this one, then I'll start a new clip. Otherwise I get upload errors and crap. Alright, new clip. Alright, so now that we're on a new clip, I'm going to be taking this negative wire. This is our negative wire from our recharge port. So this is the negative to our board. And I am going to bring it up through that hole if I can find it, just like that. Bada bing. I got insulation all the way up into the board. And, you know, I really want to attack this here. Oop, there's way too much solder on that. So I'm heating the pad and the wire. And my wire's already pre-tinned, so bam. That should be solid there. So I'm going to trim that and then take off my hemostats, and then I'm going to reflow to make sure that we're solid there. It really is a pain working with these cameras. Somebody asked, well, why doesn't somebody film a full Proffie install? Well, filming an install in general when the camera is at this distance is difficult. Alright, there, I'm happy with that. I'm going to trim that wire a little bit more. I don't like how tall it is. And let's try reflowing that again. I don't want to be on this too much longer. Let it cool. Bingo. Bingo bango. Now, on the reverse side, this side now. So I'm looking at my wiring diagram, and it looks like the first wire I need to connect is going to be my negative ground wire, which needs to go to this pad here, my negative ground wire for my switches. So I'm looking for my negative ground wire for my switches, which is right there. There's my switch ground wire. And I'm going to try to get the board about where we're going to have it. and my negative switch wire needs to go one back from that, so about there is an approximate distance. That's going to be good. This is my negative switch lead wire, and it is 30 gauge, which is, you know, relatively simple to work with. And I'm going to strip that sucker just like that. Strip it, dip it, tin it. Then I'm going to grab it with my hemostats. And we're going to put it up through the ground wire hole right there. Just like that. And it looks like I've got insulation all the way up to the board. Now this one will be easier to solder because I'm on this side that I'm used to soldering on. And I'm going to make contact with my iron, and bam! Now my switch ground wire is connected. Release the hemostats. My next wire is going to be my main switch wire, which is yellow. So I need my main switch wire. The main switch wire is going to go to the center pad here in this triplet. So approximate length of that wire is going to be about right there, yay there, but let me make sure it's long enough in case we decide to switch sides. If the owner decide he doesn't want the switch wire there, we can bring it to the other side, so I'm going to cut it there. And then I'm going to strip it, twist it, dip it, and tin it. Bam. And then I'm going to grab it with my hemostats. And I'm going to bring it up through the hole. Just like that. I've got insulation right up until the board. Still solid. And let's go ahead and clean my soldering iron. And we're going to come in here and we're going to bam. Main switch done. I'm going to break to another clip. Next clip, we're going to release our hemostats from the main switch wire, and now we are actually getting to the point where we're going to be able to fire this thing up. So my main positive wire going to my board looks like that's going to be about it right there. And I'm going to strip that cat daddy, which is 22 gauge. Bam. Twist. Dip it. And tin it. Bam. And grab it with my favorite tool, the hemostats. Lock the hemostats on. And then I'm going to come up from underneath into my positive hole. Just like that. Now I am going to solder that cat daddy in. Bam! Saw the solder flow there. So I know that's a good connection. And the only thing I I'll leave that. That's okay. And then the last wire is my NeoPixel negative. This is from my NeoPixel connector, and it's going to go to one of these bridged pairs. So now where am I going to send it? I'm thinking about soldering it right in there, and I want that wire to tuck in side there. So basically, you know, I'm going to be tucking all these wires in underneath the board, and including this NeoPixel negative, and I think what I want to do is tuck it like that, because it'll go in the slot then. So I'm going to cut our NeoPixel negative wire right there, and then I'm going to strip it, and I'm not going to strip much, just a little bit. Just a little bit. Little happy trees. Very little. Because this one's going to solder onto our pads that we've already bridged. This is 22 gauge. This is my NeoPixel supply. Now, I'm going to bring this wire from the bottom like this. I want to make sure it's not touching anything else. I just want it to be right there. I don't, you know, there's a bunch of resistors and everything right there. I don't want it messing around with that stuff. I'll have to look at that with the scope and make sure I haven't bridged anything there. So, bada bang. Our wiring mess that looked like an absolute mess before is not messy anymore, and looks like my board's going to be able to sit down in there just fine. I'll be able to clean up those wires, but there you go, installed Proffie. So let me put my SD card in there. Bada bing, like that. And I'm going to put this under a scope, so I'm going off video here to put this under my scope to check that NeoPixel negative. Now that we're installed, kill key is in, I'm going to clean off all the pads, make sure we don't have any fluxers going on there, especially around NeoPixel data. NeoPixel data, you don't want any flux around there. You can really screw up the signal. I'm going to dry that all off. And do the same on the reverse side. All that's going to be cleaned off. All that's cleaned off. And let that air dry for a minute. Now, for our moment of glory, turn that wiring mess into a install here. Remove the kill key.
Initializing. Completed.
Oh, yeah. So forgive all this shaking around, but I'm getting ready to show you guys. Bada bing. You can see my workbench, it's a bit of a mess. So there is our fresh install in this kind of modified OWK here. Let's go for activation. Bada bing. Lock up. Retraction.
Kind of failed you. I won't.
So this is activation. The red button is auxiliary. Of course, that's A2CC mod. At any rate, that's not what this video is about. This video is about installing a Proffie. There you go. Start to finish, Proffie installed. I'm not going to show the finishing button up. That'll be for the Saber owner video, which I'll do later. Greetings, everyone. May the Force be with you, or the dark side, as it were.